Namaste. We're going to be talking about the distressed democracy today, and distressed not in any third world country of Africa or Asia, but of United States of America itself. The latest election has thrown in a new president with a new kind of an outlook to what he sees as an America First policy, which seems to be colliding very intensely with the past. And the fissures of democracy that Americans have just voted for are out in the open. To discuss this further, I have with me Jane Holl Lute, who is the President and Chief Executive Officer of SICPA, and Max Abrahms, who is Associate Professor of Political Science at the Northeastern University. I'll begin with you, Jane. What is the underlying, what's happening to American politics in this new, how do we read the return of Donald Trump?
Well, I think you can at some level read it as, democracy worked in the United States the way it was designed to do. He was elected with the majority of the vote, but not over 50% of the vote. So 50% of the United States voted, of the voting public, voted for this president, and roughly 50% did not. So what you're seeing is, as we all have seen for a while, a politically divided country, but I would say two things. Number one, whether someone is a Republican or a Democrat is the least interesting thing about them, because these terms have really come to have far less meaning than they did in the past. And secondly, in an environment of 50-50, where it's roughly evenly matched, this is an environment that permits anything and compels nothing. So what you are seeing is the American public deeply in a conversation with itself, not about where it's been, but about where it's going.
How do you see that? Do you see, from where I'm sitting, it looks as though Trump has fought both the Republicans and the Democrats to become the president of United States of America, and he's bringing his own new brand of politics, which is focused on the American citizen. Was this ignored in the previous regimes?
Well, you're right. There's been a huge transformation within the GOP, and some of Trump's biggest political adversaries have actually been Republicans, the so-called never Trumpers, right? And so Trump is really his own brand, which focuses on the idea of America first. It is attractive to some longtime members on the right, but also kind of brings to the GOP longstanding themes that were associated with the Democratic Party, right? Like helping the middleman, if you will, in terms of economic policies. One thing I've been struck by, which wasn't clear, 2 months ago, is how weak the resistance to Trump has become. So his first term as president was absolutely consumed by political opponents on the right, on the left. He seems to have nullified or at least obstructed a lot of this opposition. And so if you look at polling, survey opinion on the Democratic Party, their levels of popularity are the lowest that I can ever remember seeing. We saw this in the State of the Union-like address that happened within the past month.
Could that be because of issues, or is it because of a weak leadership in Biden?
I think it is the latter. There doesn't seem to be an obvious, salient, highly capable Democrat alternative. I think that they're still looking. Some of the most, the people who have like the X factor in the Democratic Party, they're often seen as not really mainstream candidates, like AOC, for example, out of New York. It's not clear that she could win on a national level. So there is no obvious alternative to Trump. It's frankly one of the reasons why he won in the first place, was because the combination of both Kamala Harris and Joe Biden was so weak.
I'll come to you, Jane. So what are these undercurrents? What was this frustration that has suddenly brought out that has created Trump. Finally, democracy brings out the leaders that it seeks, and the leaders capitalize on the aspirations of the people who they go to get votes from. So what is this underlying, where is the frustration of the American voter that has created this new change in US politics, and which is changing every day, by the way?
I don't know that it's changing every day, but you put your finger on it. There is an anxiety-based anger, but not just in the United States. You could see this 15 years ago. I've served in both Republican and Democratic administrations. I'm affiliated with neither party. But you could see when I was last in government a while ago that publics around the world were angry. And they were angry in an anxiety-driven way. This was not purpose-driven anger. When you have purpose-driven anger, people kill each other. But this is anxiety-based anger. The people felt like we can't trust business, we can't trust the banks, we can't trust the market, we can't trust the media, we don't trust our governments. So it's actually a little interesting for Americans to hear that, we can't trust the United States anymore. Well, wake up. Many of you aren't trusted by your own people anymore. This is a widespread global phenomenon. And in the United States, it has played itself out through the political process. And, is there effective resistance to Trump? There are certainly growing resistance, and there are plenty of issues to choose from, because he's heading in direction on a number of fronts that people who supported him wanted, some of which people who supported him did not exactly want, and the people who opposed him didn't at all want. But that's not itself not exactly true. I don't know anyone in the United States who think that the federal government is as lean and fit and efficient as it possibly could be. And so there are a lot of people who believe it's time for reform. There's a lot of people who believe that there are things the federal government is doing or has been doing that it shouldn't be doing at all. One of the questions that animated this panel was, isn't capitalism the foundation of democracy? Not in the United States, it's not. That's one of the ways in which we express our individual freedom. Individual freedom is the foundation of the American version of liberal democracy. And you're seeing some of that play out with all of the effects, both anticipated and not.
What about you, Max? Do you think capitalism is clashing with democracy, or is freedom the underlying expression?
That's a tough one to answer.
Let me rephrase it. A lot of frustration that she talked about right now has probably come from the fact that since the mid-80s or late 80s, the median wages have been flat, adjusted for inflation, while the rich have got extremely rich. So is there a feeling that capitalism is hijacking their democracy?
I do think that there is resentment which has fueled Trump's rise. The MAGA movement is in part a critique of an unfair, capitalistic system. And we see that play out in terms of trade, for example, this idea of America first. It seems like although Trump's views on tariffs are controversial around the world, among his support base within MAGA, there is quite a bit of support for that because there's a sense that they've been ignored.
I think I would just add to that and say there is a not small feeling, in other words, a relatively widespread feeling that the United States has been taken for granted around the world, that the United States has been the underwriter of global stability over the past 80 years or more, that we have been the underwriters of global prosperity. And so, people feel like, but there's an awful lot of criticism of the United States as well. And so it seems wrong and unfair, and the U.S. needs to level the playing field in fighting back. I think this is part of what's fueling the agenda. But if we come back to your question about capitalism, there has been a feeling, as you rightly point out, since the 80s, that the growing disparity between the haves and have-nots has only been greater. And part of really what's at the core of the American ethos is equality of opportunity, not necessarily equality of outcome. And some have argued that over the past dozen or more years, the left or the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been pushing an equality of outcome agenda, not an equality of opportunity agenda. And, you know, for most people who feel like they're tired of having their speech corrected, they're tired of having what appears to be other, you know, quotas for other individuals, ABM, anybody but me, and there's a degree of frustration that has grown out of that. Having said all that, I believe our system will eventually correct itself.
Here is another part to this question, which is, and I agree with you, in terms of equality of opportunities, the maximum number of billionaires or new billionaires are also coming from the United States. The greatest opportunities that have thrown up mega dollars everywhere has come from the United States. And yet, for people to feel that the American dream, I'm losing the American dream, seems to be on the drift. Where is this contradiction? Why do people feel that money is bad? Why do people feel that big companies are bad? Could it be the manner in which they influence politics? Max?
You know, it's funny because there is that sense, but on the other hand, you know, some of the wealthiest, most influential people in the world can also be heroes politically. So, you know, Elon Musk has, you know, tremendous influence, and he is widely appreciated among Donald Trump supporters for restoring what they see as sanity, restoring free speech, reducing the power of legacy media, which is seen as corrupt. So, yes, you're right. There is tension between the haves and the have-nots, but we do continue to exalt our financial oligarchs, don't we?
Just one second, Dave. Let me push on Elon Musk a bit. What we see from a distance, halfway across the globe, is that Elon Musk is as much worshipped as he is crucified on a daily basis.
Yeah,
so I think
divisive.
over there, also the democratic fissures that are expressing themselves through economic evaluations are also divided there. So what is this divided America? Is it political? Is it economic? What is happening?
What do you think, Shane? I don't really think that it's so much economic. I think it could be well represented in terms of people's, you know, media preferences, in terms of where they live. I think it has more to do with culture than, you know, their net worth is my view.
Jane, what do you think?
I think that's right. Look, we have a lot of differences among us as Americans. I mean, it's really actually one of our defining national characteristics. You know, every one of us almost, except Native Americans, are from somewhere else. You know, speaking multiple languages in households. You know, a third of Americans are second generation or third generation or newer to this country. I think people feel as though they've lost equal access to opportunity. I think it has come because other groups have been privileged as a corrective to you know, decades, centuries, whatever, millennia of privileging other groups. And I think it became, in many cases, too much to bear. What you find, though, every single day are examples of grace, understanding, and outreach among Americans of very, very different political persuasions and economic persuasions, and that is one of our core strengths.
It's likewise in India as well. We have similar problems, and I think all democracies would be having similar problems. So let me ask a more provocative question. Is democracy weakening? Is democracy being weaponized against itself? Is the American democracy being weaponized against itself? Is free speech of America being weaponized by other actors such as China or let's say the other hostile immigrants that are coming, and they are changing the contours of discourse in America?
I think that the media is contributing to this view that with Trump, we're experiencing democratic erosion. but I think that that's really a simplification. I think that there was actually a tremendous amount of democratic erosion under Biden as well, but the media was in on it. So there was plenty of corruption during the Biden administration as well. It's well known, the story about Hunter's laptop and how the Biden campaign solicited the support of basically leading figures in the intel agencies to essentially lie to the American public and lead them to believe that it was a Russian, operation in order to put Biden in a better position to win the debate against Trump. The media was in the tank for Biden in terms of validating his mental acuity when every sentient person knew that that was untrue. At universities, the system was much more biased, which is something that Jane has been alluding to. So in some ways, under Trump, I actually think that we're making some progress, even though that's not the way the media is characterizing his relationship to democracy.
What do you think, Jane?
I don't think democracy, the American version of democracy, again, one of the things about this moment that has been so surprising to me is how little the world understands Americans. And you all think you understand us really very well, and you don't, it turns out, which is what for me has been surprising as someone who has spent my whole career in international work and who's, half of my children live abroad. And so, and they all speak another language.
So what are we unable to see that you would, what would you like to correct?
The American democracy is a special democracy in that it is the rule of the majority with absolute mindfulness of the rights of the minority. And so, for example, in the United States, no religion is as equally protected as any religion under our Constitution. Now, we're undergoing a major re-examination and self-examination of a number of values and principles. But I think fundamentally, the average American is deeply committed to liberal values of individual freedom, individual expression. There is no more fundamental right than a say in how you're governed. And that's what we did. So, have we been introspective before? We have. Have we been self-regarding and America firsting before? We have. And our pendulum swings, and I think it will swing again. This is not the last moment of the United States of America.
Last question. So how does this new America, which is driven by a new kind of surge in a new democracy, which has thrown up a new leader, look like over the next 4 years?
I don't even know that we need to look that far for uncertainty. A real question is what will happen to the current brand of Republican leadership after Trump? Will it be able to survive Trump? To such a large extent, the current party is focused on this one individual. So what will advance, presidency look like? How would it be different? Tulsi Gabbard is at this conference. I see her as a potential leader on a national level. She could be the next president. It's possible. And if she were to become president, I think the party would look very different. She has appeal not just among Republicans, but Democrats too. And surely that presidency would look very different as well. So what will the political climate look like in 4 years is very much an open question, I think.
And in terms of foreign policy, therefore, so to extend that question, where are the big changes going to happen? We thought that Trump would be impacting Russia and China the most. It turns out he's impacting and adversely affecting European Union the most in terms of NATO, security covers, and so on. Where is this going? So allies and adversaries are now put on the same platform by Trump in his foreign policy. Where is this going?
Well, I don't know that they're put on the same platform. I think you're fundamentally seeing the president challenge them in an aggressive way to say, re-examine, your first principles here. You say you support us. Have you supported us? Have you fulfilled your burden in NATO? And all the European leaders are lining up now saying, yes, we should have been doing more. We will do more. We are going to do more. So I think that's true. This is a moment where you're really seeing, I think, a reflection of two, sort of approaches to the U.S. role in the world. One is, Democrats seem to be fundamentally uncomfortable with power. They somehow see it as illegitimate and, we're all in charge and, we all get a say. And Republicans, again, to the extent those terms are useful, and I don't think they are very much, they're uncomfortable with rapid change. Well, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're in the environment of. So which point of view, the president, whether you like him or not, is articulating a point of view about America's role in the world. What is the alternate party's view? Do they have an idea? How do they describe it? What does that mean ultimately that the United States does? It's not just enough to be against President Trump if you are in his policies, and there are plenty, 50% of Americans are, right? That 50% needs to know what they're for.
Thank you, Jane, Max. And we have the next 46 months to see where this conversation takes us. And being the kind of disruptor Trump is, I feel that we will be changing our bases every 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.